Welcome back to another edition of Titletown Talk. I'm your host, Jackson Tolliver. Yes, I haven't recorded in a couple weeks here. I'll be honest, guys, things have been busy. Working. Got a new cat who's sitting right next to me. Hopefully he behaves while I am recording this podcast. He's blind. His name is Odin. And he is very, very sweet. If he comes over here, those of you who are watching on YouTube will be blessed to see him because he is pretty awesome. We got a lot to get into today. I have to talk about everything that's been going on with the Celtics since their opening game win against New York and now looming their biggest challenge tomorrow against the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are 15-0. Who would have expected that? Not me, I'll be honest. But when you look at it, it makes sense. We'll get into all that. Drake Maye, killing it. Even though the Patriots are still losing some games, Drake Maye has looked really good throughout his most recent starts. We'll get into the Bruins, who are just the definition of mediocrity right now. And the Red Sox, could they get Juan Soto? Maybe. And how exciting would that be? We'll get into it all. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Let's start with the Boston Celtics, who are currently sitting at 11-3 after a pretty tumultuous first 2-3 weeks. Now, their record was 11-3 at this point last year, so keeping on pace with their win total, which is pretty impressive. A lot of those wins, I feel like, have been a little more close than Celtics fans would like to see, particularly this last one against Toronto. I was there with CLNS, producing and, getting all the content, figuring it all out. So that was an interesting game because you're going in there thinking everyone's going to be like everyone's thinking that it's just going to be dominant, that the Celtics are going to win easily. They don't have Scotty Barnes on the Raptors side. Huge loss for them. They don't have Emmanuel Quickly, two of their best players. But they do have RJ Barrett, and they do have Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl ended up being a huge problem for the Celtics, which outlined the main storyline, I would say, for the Celtics throughout these first 2 weeks, which is that the rim protection is just horrible. I believe they got 73, 74 points in the paint throughout that game. Jakob Poeltl posted a career-high 35 points. His previous was set 2 years ago, which was at 31. So obviously very impressive stuff from him. And the Celtics just really had no answer. I don't think that this one was one of those games where the Celtics just come out with no energy and they just, underestimate their opponent and fall flat. I think they were really competing for a lot of this game. They came out strong. I believe they started off on like a 12-4 run or something like that. Looked like it was going to be an easy night. But Toronto kept fighting. They hung in there. And they obviously made it a hell of a game. But it does outline this huge problem that we've seen in other games as well, which is that the Celtics don't have any rim protection without Kristaps Porzingis. Now, when Kristaps Porzingis returns, which we just learned today is going to be pretty soon, he's going up to Maine to rehab with them. He's going to practice today and then come back to the Celtics. So I would assume that means he comes back in the next week or two. This is something that's been speculated on by a lot of the top NBA reporters. I know a lot of our CLNS crew, including Noah Dalzell and Bobby Manning, predicted that he would probably be coming back within the next couple weeks here. So that all makes sense. That timeline is still adding up, and when he comes back, it will be a huge help for Boston's rim protection and their paint defense. But the flip side is Kristaps Porzingis isn't going to play every game for the remainder of the season. We saw last year he was hurt in the playoffs for the majority of the playoffs, really. He was hurt for the entire second round, entire third round, and a decent amount of the finals as well. So that's a problem. But the flip side is they were fine in those rounds without him last year. They dominated, even with Al Horford starting at center. So why has the rim protection fallen off a cliff so badly? I believe they ranked 26th in points allowed in the paint. That's not good enough. So what's going on? Is it Al's age? Is it an effort thing? I really couldn't tell you because their roster is just about the same. Would their rim protection have been worse if they were running with that starting five throughout the entire regular season? Maybe, and they just got lucky with matchups. But then you have the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I don't remember the rim protection being a huge issue in that series, and it's going to be a huge issue on Tuesday. I'll jump right into this and give you my take for this game. Cleveland's 15-0, coming to the Garden, undefeated. NBA Cup game, which means the Celtics essentially have to win to stay alive in that tournament because they dropped that horrendous game against the Hawks last week. I don't think the Celtics are going to beat this Cleveland team. I really don't. Only 4 teams in NBA history have ever started 15-0. They're the 4th now. And all 3 of those teams before them made the finals. Yes, they had a relatively easy strength of schedule. I will say that they somewhat struggled against the Sixers when they had all three of their main guys out. They had the Hornets, they've had the Bucks, which look like a dumpster fire right now. So yes, they haven't had the most difficult of schedules, but they did beat the Warriors, who are the number one seed in the West right now. They did beat the Knicks, who started off a little slow, but they're picking it up. So like, it's not like they just had a total cakewalk, but the reason why I'm so bullish on them on Tuesday, which pains me to say, is because of the problems we just talked about with the rim protection. Cleveland has Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley, 2 7-footers plus, and I don't see how the Celtics are going to be able to contain a guy like Evan Mobley, who's a rising star in this league, really seems to be piecing it together and figuring it out this year, and Jarrett Allen, when they could barely contain Jakob Poeltl. And no disrespect to Jakob Poeltl, I think he's a good player, but Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen are just dominant post players, and I don't think the Celtics have an answer for that. Horford could do a little bit on him, but he lacks a lot of height. Cade has been pretty inconsistent on defense, to be honest, and I like Cade a lot, and we'll get into him, but his defense is something that leaves a lot to be desired right now. Still something he definitely needs to work on. And Tillman hasn't been able to protect the rim or even find a spot in the rotation. Luke Cornett is Luke Cornett. So like, I just have trouble picturing how they're going to be able to stop that. The Cavs have a great roster, and I think that the biggest difference between this year and last year, goes without saying, is the coach. I'm not saying JB Bickerstaff is a bad coach, but Kenny Atkinson seems to have really turned this program, not turned it around, because it wasn't like they were bad before. They just never really were considered a serious title contender, and now you have to look at them as a serious contender to come out of the East and win an NBA championship. As of right now, right? They haven't lost a game yet. A lot of things can change. They can lose, I'm sure, like, they're not going to go 82-0. That goes without saying, but they might go on a little losing streak. They might deal with injuries, which they have in the past. Last year, injuries killed them. They lost Darius Garland and Evan Mobley for so long. So you never know what's going to happen, and this might look ridiculous, come April, when you have this clip of me saying that they're title contenders. But as of right now, it's impossible to say that they're not. And it's impossible to say that they're not the best team in the NBA, because they haven't lost yet. And they're better than the Celtics right now, because the Celtics have lost 3 games. One of them was to the Hawks with no Trae Young. For whatever reason, that seems to happen every year. The same thing happened last year. I believe it happened last year twice. So, like, some of those losses, and the Pacers loss was tough, even though the Pacers are a pretty decent team. The Warriors game, like, you're going to lose games like that. The Warriors are a great team. You can't get mad if, like, losses happen, especially without Kristaps Porzingis, who's such a huge foundational piece of your team and obviously provides so much for the Celtics offense and defense. But the Cavs, you have to say they're better than the Celtics right now, because they haven't lost. Now, Tuesday is a chance for the Celtics to prove that they're still the alpha. They're still the top dog in the East and the entire NBA. And I think they'll be locked in from the jump, and they're going to really want to win this game, not just for those bragging rights and the ability to say we're the best, but also the NBA Cup, which does hold a $500,000 incentive for the winners, a trip to Vegas. And the Celtics want to win. So I really do think they're going to be locked in. I don't think their energy or effort's going to be a problem. I just am really concerned about the rim protection issues. I'm concerned about the fact that Donovan Mitchell seems to always go off against the Celtics. I am concerned about, the 3-point shooting struggles that the Celtics have somewhat had recently. They just haven't looked like themselves for the past week or two, to be honest. And that doesn't mean they're not winning games. They've only lost 3 games so far this season. But besides that first game in New York, I don't think we've seen the peak Celtics. And maybe we saw that in the first game because they were so fired up and they were so energetic because it was banner night and the season opener, and you're against New York, who's allegedly supposed to be the team that's going to kill you and that was built to defeat you. But I think the silver lining there, in that they haven't played up to their expectations and standards for the past 2 weeks, is that in this game they will, because they have a huge reason to be motivated, to take their opponent seriously and not take the night off. So I think it's going to be a great game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout for either side. I just think that Cleveland's ability to attack the rim and their size down low is going to be too much for the Celtics to handle. Of course, I hope I'm wrong. I'm sure you all hope I'm wrong. That's just where I'm at right now. Peyton Pritchard, let's move on and talk about him, because I told you in the podcast I released the day before the season started, watch Peyton Pritchard. He has a decent chance to be Sixth Man of the Year. When I recorded that podcast, his odds were sitting at about plus 6,000 to win Sixth Man, and they've dropped significantly now. I think he's if not the favorite, he's the second favorite. I try to tell you guys, Peyton Pritchard, when he gets his opportunity, he balls out. Almost every game we've seen him this season, he has balled out. He's had a couple off games. I know the Warriors game wasn't his best, and the Hawks game wasn't his best, and the win in Toronto wasn't his best. The win versus Toronto wasn't his best. But damn, he looks good. I mean, he just brings so much energy off the bench. It's almost like the Celtics have dealt with so many slow starts in some of their games this season so far. And when he's come off, you're like, thank goodness, like he's going to change it. That Milwaukee game is a perfect example where the Celtics were just getting battered early on. It looked like Milwaukee. And at that point, Milwaukee was 2-7, I believe. So they obviously really want that win. Peyton Pritchard came in and was just hitting 3 after 3 and kept them in the game single-handedly. And the Celtics were obviously able to come back and win that game after being down like 14 in the first quarter. And I believe they were down 10 or 11 at half. So a lot of that was thanks to Peyton Pritchard. He's been great. His shot-making ability has been terrific. I think he's gotten so much better. In terms of it just, I mean, like, he's never really struggled with confidence, obviously, shooting half-court shots, but I think he's definitely gotten a bigger green light than he has in the past to shoot whenever he wants, whatever shot he wants. And when you're on the court with guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, it's hard to have that sort of confidence. Like, no, I'm going to take this shot. Not JT, not JB, not D White. So I think his confidence has gone even higher up than it was last season. His play has gone up every single season that we've seen him. He obviously is such a hard worker, and he's gotten better defensively as well. I think the way that he defends for his size is really impressive, and the way that he rebounds for his size is even more impressive. Like next game you're watching, in tomorrow night's game versus Cleveland, watch the way that he's going to pick up Darius Garland or Ty Jerome, whoever it is, full court. He's going to give him a hard time, and he's going to get some offensive rebounds. He's great at that for his size, which I've said about him, ever since I started this podcast. That's one of the most underrated but overwhelming impacts that Peyton Pritchard has on the game. So watch for that. I just have been floored with Peyton Pritchard. And let's check in on my other guys that I did say would be the most improved players. Jason Tatum, I believe he's second in the MVP race right now, according to NBA, their official ladder. Jokic is probably going to win it. But JT has been nothing short of remarkable this year. Obviously, his shot against the Raptors, Picasso, even though he did travel. But JB was fouled right before, so I feel like that sort of cancels each other out. But that was a beautiful shot. Made up for his drastically awful miss that he had at the end of regulation, which would have won the game. But that was an epic moment, and I was glad to be there. Even though I wasn't actually watching on the court, I was already downstairs setting up for postgame with Rich LeMay. If you don't know who that is, that's one of the very talented behind-the-scenes guys we have at CLNS. He's a great photographer and videographer. But we had already went downstairs to set up for postgame, and we were watching with some of the Celtics staff on the TV the entire last couple minutes of the fourth and overtime. But yeah, JT, big shot. And then Jordan Walsh was the other guy I mentioned to be a most improved player. He has been kind of underwhelming in his minutes compared to what the level he was playing at in preseason. But he's getting minutes and he's getting run. So as I mentioned in that preview show, the most improved, he has to come from the ground floor because he hadn't really done anything at the NBA level, barely got any minutes last season, wasn't a part of the rotation, and as of right now, he is part of the rotation. Now, who I probably should have said instead of Jordan Walsh for most improved is Neemias Queta. Now, he has been remarkable. On the offensive end, he's been really good. Defensive end, he's gotten some great highlight blocks, and yes, you can start to make the comparisons to Robert Williams because of what he does when he's on the floor. He's not an outside guy, but he can catch lobs, he can block shots, and he can just give you a big body, a good presence out there. He's strong. Yes, he has to work on his post defense. Yes, he has to clean up some of his mistakes, but he's a young player, and to me, it looks like the Celtics have gotten a real steal. I think he's been great so far. There's moments when he hasn't been great, but in terms of his plus-minus, in terms of his offensive rebounding abilities, his impact has been really, really strong for the Celtics, and he's certainly overtaken Xavier Tillman as of right now for that backup center spot. He's overtaken Luke on most nights. He started a couple games, so clearly Joe Mazzulla and the coaching staff like what they're seeing with him. I think the players like playing with him. A lot of them have given him some praise, including Al, JT, JB. They've all praised him for what he's been doing recently. And this is one development that I really didn't see coming for the Celtics. I didn't see Neemias Queta getting this much run early on. I thought it was going to be the Horford and Tillman show, just because of how great Tillman's finals run was last season. I thought he was really good when he was called upon in the playoffs and in the finals. Particularly, he had that one great game where he hit the big corner three, played some decent defense. He's, to me, always been like a guy who's switchable and can guard from the perimeter really well considering his height. But he's not a huge rim protector. He's not somebody that's going to, provide that dominating presence in the paint like Queta can. So I think that's why it hasn't really worked, because if you have Horford and Tillman, who are pretty similar players, Horford's obviously much better and a lot more experienced, but I think the problem is when you start that lineup like Joe did in that one game against Brooklyn, where you have Horford and Tillman starting with whatever combination of, like that happened because I believe JB was still out. So Holiday, Tatum, White. The problem is that the rim protection is not going to be there because Horford and Tillman aren't huge threats at the rim. Queta is a threat at the rim. He needs to clean up his mistakes because he fouls a lot, but he's gotten better at that. And the other thing with Queta is like, I feel like he gets better and better every single week that he plays. His ascension has been something remarkable to watch on the offensive end and the defensive end. So I'm really impressed with what I've seen from him, and I expect even when Kristaps Porzingis gets back, I think he's still going to be a part of this rotation. It's hard for me to imagine him falling out. He's just been that good. So like, if you're thinking about a fully healthy Celtics team, you obviously have that same starting five you had at the playoffs last year when everyone was fully healthy. Drew, Derek White, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Kristaps Porzingis. And then your first guys off the bench, or your bench unit, is Peyton Pritchard, Al Horford, Sam Hauser, and then I think it's Queta. Now, obviously, a lot of that is matchup dependent. I think Luke can slide in for Queta for some of those games, just based off whatever the team needs. I think Luke is still a better rebounder. I think Luke is still a smarter player. I think Luke is a little better at setting screens as well. So, and Luke has great chemistry with Peyton and Sam, so it's good to see those three guys out there together because they know how to play together. They've done it for so long. Luke and Sam go back to playing in Maine together, so like they understand how to make each other's games work. And Peyton and Sam as a duo, whoever you put them with, always know how to play with each other. They know the spots that the other one likes to go to, and they do really well with that. But like I said, I think a lot of it's going to be matchup dependent on when you put out Luke and when you put out Queta going forward, when you have a fully healthy squad. But what that means is Tillman is falling out of the roster, and that shouldn't be a surprise. He can't make it in the roster now when the top center option is still out. So I would assume that he gets shipped off before the deadline. If you can get a second round pick back for him, that's fine. I just don't see him having any impact on this team, and he's not like a guy that you're going to develop because I don't think his ceiling is super high either. I think you send him over to Maine and then you call up somebody from the G League team, from the Maine Celtics. Maybe Baylor Shireman can take that spot, even though, no, he technically has a roster spot. So I don't know if you call up one of the two-way guys or if you make a move and try to get somebody who can just, like, who's just a rim protector, just a big body center. That could be the only addition that I see the Celtics making prior to or on the trade deadline. But yeah, I just think like Queta has a spot on this team for the weeks to come, even when Kristaps Porzingis gets back, which is obviously Kristaps Porzingis is gonna be like medicine for the Celtics team on both ends of the floor. You can see his absence; it's glaring because the rim protection has been awful, like I mentioned, and Kristaps Porzingis just opens up so many other things that you can do, and frankly, just makes the opposing team overthink what they're doing because as soon as Kristaps Porzingis gets a switch to a smaller guard, not younger, to a guard or to a smaller guy, he's scoring almost every time. So that's a whole new wrinkle to the Celtics team that you have to think about when you're coaching and when you're playing defense on the fly. It's like you have to really, really think, we can't switch because it's guaranteed points, but if you don't switch, a guy's going to be open and pop out, to the three-point line, and then you're going to give him up that way. So I think across the board, the Celtics offensive numbers will go up. Besides like the per player averages, like Tatum's scoring numbers will probably go down because Kristaps I expect to average somewhere in that 20 points per game range. So him coming back is huge. He's going to help a lot of these problems. Like if the Celtics lose to Cleveland on Tuesday, which I think they will, I think the Celtics will win the next one if Kristaps is available because he's the direct antidote. He's the direct counter to the size that Cleveland has in their 4 and their 5 in Mobley and Allen, and he can help with a lot of those rim protection issues. I believe he averaged somewhere in the realm of like a block and a half last season, probably a little bit less, probably like 1.2, 1.3, which is probably similar to where he is for his career too. He's not Wemby in terms of how he can block shots, but he's huge. He's 7'3" with a huge wingspan. And I think he's gotten a lot better on that side of the floor. I think his defensive play is pretty often underrated in terms of like his game. Like everyone knows that he can shoot threes and that he's an offensive threat, but he's good on defense too, and he's getting to fix a lot of these problems that the Celtics have. And I would try to add some rim protection to go behind him, or to go when he can't go. I can't think of a guy off the top of my head that I would like them to go after, but that's down the road, right? They're not going to make any moves like that for months, likely. They're going to see how this goes. And this Cleveland thing is going to be the biggest test for them. I think that's all I had to talk about with the Celtics. I'm sure I'm forgetting some huge storyline. Sam Hauser needs to be a little bit better. I think his numbers have fallen off. He was dealing with that back injury for a couple games, and it is what it is. JB's been JB. He's had the Celtics are getting good at knowing like who is the hot hand, if it's JB or JT, and who to feed. Horford's been great. Drew and Derek White have been great, all things considered. So business as usual essentially for the Celtics. Like I said, the exact same record as they had last year. Cleveland is the elephant in the room, and tomorrow is going to be a super exciting game. I can't wait. I'll be live tweeting it and live skying it. I don't know if you call it that, but I am on Blue Sky now. Jack's Tall, same handle as my Twitter. And I cannot wait for that game. It's going to be something special. Let's move on and talk about the other elephant in the room. I don't really know if that's the right term for it. Let's talk about the quarterback that is taking New England by storm, and everyone is pinning their future hopes for the organization on, which is Drake Maye. Drake Maye. Now, I believe the last time I recorded was a while ago. It was after his first game in Houston. No, actually, I think it was after the Jacksonville game. Regardless, since then, the Patriots have gone 2-2. They won the New York Jets game, but that wasn't really a Drake Maye win. That was a Jacoby Brissett win. And then they lost the next week against the Titans, but Drake Maye played phenomenally. Then they won last week against the Bears, and then yesterday they obviously lost to the Los Angeles Rams. I just blanked for some reason. If you want more on the Los Angeles Rams game, check me out. I'm going live with Taylor Kyles, the Patriots guru, at 6 p.m. on CLNS. So if you're listening to this before then, make sure to tune into that. We're going to be doing a Q&A, film review, all that good stuff. So it's good that I remember who they were playing. But regardless, I thought this was a great showing from Drake Maye as well. You could make the argument that it was his best performance so far in his career. Yes, he threw the interception at the end, and it was reminiscent of the interception that he threw against Tennessee, which was the final play of the game. I know it wasn't technically the final play in this one because they had to knee it out on the other side, but it ended the game. But regardless, I mean, he had 280-something yards, 2 passing touchdowns, only the 1 interception. He had that fumble, which I don't really put the blame on him for. That kind of stuff just happens, especially when you have an offensive line like the Patriots do, which is pretty makeshift and changes week after week. It's hard to build continuity and know where the holes in your offensive line are going to come from, if they're going to come from everywhere. So, you have to be hyper aware. He's also a rookie. He's going to get better regardless. You have to feel really encouraged from what you've seen from Drake Maye so far. And if the wins were there for the Patriots, if the defense could hold up their end of the bargain, which they have a hard time doing sometimes, I think Drake Maye would be a lot more seriously involved in these Rookie of the Year talks. I think, honestly, if I had to pick right now, it'd be Bo Nix, because the Broncos are rolling, and they had a great game yesterday against the Falcons, which, the Falcons are supposed to be a good team this year, but they've just fallen off a cliff for me. Haven't been great. So, I digress. Drake Maye has been great, and I think the most impressive thing and the biggest area of growth that we've seen is, his confidence. He's gotten more and more confident every single year. His big plays, and his reading of defenses has really improved at a staggering rate, frankly. That's usually the biggest thing that quarterbacks struggle with in their rookie year is understanding different NFL coverages, adjusting to the difference between NFL defenses and college defenses, where in the NFL, the amount of separation that you can allow between a receiver and a defender shrinks so much. And that means that your accuracy and your window to throw shrinks so much. And I think he's done a great job with that, trusting his teammates. His pocket presence has been great. His ability to determine when he should throw it and when he should rush, or when he should, scramble to the right side and then throw. I think his pocket presence has been just phenomenal. His decision making has been great. He knows how to air it out when it's time, and usually his wide receivers let him down. But like if he had better options out there, no disrespect to Kayshon Boutte and no disrespect to Pop Douglas. Pop Douglas just isn't a deep threat. That's not, which is why that last play yesterday was so staggering to me that he tried to go deep for Pop, because I don't think Pop is like a deep threat receiver. He's a slot receiver. He's small comparatively. So like I think next year the Patriots are going to be a problem. I think because whatever happens this offseason, right? They're probably going to get a top 5 pick. I don't know if they'll keep it or trade it back, but I assume they take a wide receiver with their first pick and they take a tackle not too far after. And those are the two biggest pieces that you need for this Patriots team right now. And then next year you get Jawan Bentley back. You hopefully address some of those larger defensive concerns. Obviously safety's a problem now because the whole Jabril Peppers situation. I doubt he's going to be coming back. That's not based off anything. It's just based off my intuition with how these situations usually play out, unless there is clear and conclusive evidence to exonerate him, which was going around. Like I believe Kraft said that there was, or he said that there was, and then Kraft said they were looking into it, whatever. Unless they can fully clear him of what he's being accused of, which is, awful domestic abuse and so on and so forth. I've sort of just written him off in my head. And Marte Mapu, he's sort of unproven and he's injury prone, it seems like. And Del Pettis has been doing a pretty decent job. But you can obviously see like there's room to strengthen that room. And then of course, like the edge rushing, they've done some things to address that. They got Yannick Ngakoue. Christian Barmore is back, which is so amazing to see. Obviously had that huge blood clot scare that was back in July, I believe, late July, early August. And that has kept him out throughout the season so far. But he was able to make his debut yesterday. His presence, I thought, was felt, especially in terms of the run game. Patriots have had such a huge problem with the run game, defending the run, that is, throughout this season. And I thought yesterday it looked a lot better than it had in previous games. I don't know if that's just because of Barmore. Regardless, he definitely provides a huge boost for that element of their game. So I thought him coming back was huge. And I'm losing my train of thought here. But yeah, I think next year, I don't know if it's Ted McMillan. I don't know if it's Travis Hunter, if he even wants to play wide receiver. I just think Travis Hunter's too small to play wide receiver. I think he'd succeed more as a cornerback in the NFL. But regardless, he obviously can't do both. So whatever the Patriots decide to do in the draft, it doesn't really matter right now. But my point is that next year, when you give Drake Maye another offseason, and he already looks way far ahead of schedule to me. He looks way better than I think a lot of people expected that he would. Once you give him another full offseason to train and to practice and to develop, and you get him some weapons at wide receiver, I think we're talking about a team that's expected to make the playoffs and maybe expected to even win a game. Once that defense gets bolstered up a little bit, like they seem way closer than I thought they were when the season started, almost solely because of Drake Maye. His improvement has been staggering to watch, just absolutely staggering. Now, the problem with all this, and the thing that still has to be resolved, is the Patriots coaching staff. Yesterday, the Patriots coaching staff made a series of questionable decisions that I did not agree with at all. And, like I said, when I'm on Pat's Daily later with Taylor Kyles, he'll be able to explain them a lot better than I can. But the problem is the coaching right now, I would say. Besides the fact that, there could be better weapons on offense and the defense has some holes clearly, I think a lot of it falls on the coaching. And Gerard Mayo is a young coach. DeMarcus Covington and Alex Van Pelt, Alex Van Pelt is pretty experienced, but DeMarcus Covington's a pretty green coach in terms of having that much responsibility. So you're going to understand and accept some growing pains with this coaching staff. But some of the decisions they made yesterday were very head-scratching, to say the least. First of all, just their decision to not have Christian Gonzalez shadowing Puka Nacua, who I think is a bigger threat than Cooper Kupp, to be honest, because Puka Nacua is younger, he's faster, he's stronger than Cooper Kupp. I think that Puka Nacua is the main threat on this Rams offense, and I think Gonzo would have done a really good job against him. The decision to punt it into the end zone instead of trying that 54-yard field goal, I believe it was the end of the second quarter, staggering, didn't really make much sense to me. Joey Slides made 64-yarder before a couple weeks ago. I don't know if the wind was different or whatever it was. And Gerard Mayo said that after the game, we have a lot of determining factors. And I think his range was 53 in pregame warmup. So 54, just give him a chance because you're not really surrendering that much. You're still, Like, even if he misses, you're only giving up the ball on the 35 or the 40. So it like punting in the end zone isn't going to help you at all. That was a head scratcher. Running it on third down and then settling for 3, I believe that was in the third quarter. Another head scratcher. And then in the fourth quarter, when Los Angeles had the punt, to give the ball back to New England for their game-winning drive, essentially, there was I think it was like an illegal motion snap penalty, some sort of pre-snap penalty, I believe, or procedural penalty. And instead of opting to have the Rams re-kick it, and maybe, you have Marcus Jones, who is a blue chip punt returner, he's really good. Instead of trying to have him maybe get a better return, get some better field position, you just take the 5 yards, which puts you on the 10. So that's not ideal. I would have done things differently, obviously, but I'm not an NFL coach. But I'm just relaying to you that this is what seems to be most people's issues with yesterday's game, and seems to be the biggest problem right now, and the biggest barrier to the Patriots' success is coaching. Does that mean they're going to change their coach? No. I think Drake Maye has a pretty good chance to still be a good NFL coach. A lot of coaches don't figure it out in their first year, and a lot of owners and franchises don't give their coaches chances to grow. And Robert Kraft clearly believes in Drake Maye. He didn't even conduct any other interviews. He just knew that this was the guy. Now, in hindsight, was that a mistake? Maybe. He probably would have been better to do his due diligence and maybe, bring in somebody like Mike Vrabel for an interview. Maybe one of those coordinators who was bringing up a lot of attention as head coaching candidates, like Ben Johnson with the Lions or whoever it is. I don't fault him for making the decision that he thought was best. He did it. And my point in saying this is, I don't think Drake Maye gets fired at the end of the season because Kraft still believes in him. And, the Patriots are sitting at 3 wins right now and 8 losses. So I assume they get to 5 or 6 wins. That's not a terrible record. I think a lot of people are predicting the Patriots to be in that range or to have even less. I saw a lot of 4-win projections, 3-win projections. They've already beaten the 3-win total. So, or they've set the 3-win total and they have multiple games to go. So my point is, the Patriots have been involved in just about every game except one, where they got blown out, which was that Jets game in Week 3. Every other game they've been in till the end, really. I mean, the Texans game looked a lot worse than it was, but they were in that game through and through until the very end. So my point being is, I feel like the Patriots are a few plays away from being 6-5 right now, and they're 3-8. So I don't think it's time to fire Drake Maye yet, because I think he's done a relatively decent job based off the cards he's been dealt. We knew the offense was lacking some weapons, and the offensive line was going to be a mess, and the defense has dealt with so many injuries, and the Jabril Pepper situation, who's one of their captains. They've lost 4 out of their 6 captains, so it's been a tough situation, and you have a rookie quarterback who, as great as he's been, is still a rookie and he's still developing. So, I don't think that it's time to fire Drake Maye after the season by any means. I think you give him another year, maybe another 2 years to see what he can do. Now, if, next season they gear up for some weapons and they start off the season 0-6 or 1-5, then I'd start being concerned about his job security. But this year, no. I think there's nothing, even if they lose out the rest of the way, I still don't think that Kraft would fire Drake Maye because he believes in him and that's his guy. And there's an element of it where he's I want to show you guys what I believe he can do. So I don't see him getting fired at all. I'm gonna move on because my throat is starting to hurt and I'm sick. I'm kind of sick. I have a mini cold. It's that time of year. I'm just gonna touch on. I mean, the Bruins have just been mid. They need so much, and I feel like I say the same thing every single week, which is they need more defense, and now they've lost Hampus Lindholm. So it's what are they even gonna do moving forward? How are they gonna fill that void? I don't know. I'm gonna run through it really quickly because, like I said, I'm feeling sick. But the Red Sox, could they get Juan Soto? They did have a meeting last week. Apparently it went well. They gave him a 3-hour presentation, but didn't discuss any terms of the potential, possibly record-breaking contract. It's, from my understanding, it's between the Red Sox, the Mets, and the Yankees, and the Blue Jays were thought to be in that conversation as well. But I haven't heard a lot of buzz in that area recently. If Juan Soto comes to the Red Sox, this is going to become a full-time Red Sox podcast. I'm joking. But, how cool is that going to be? How exciting would it be if Juan Soto came to the Red Sox? And then you look at their roster top to bottom, they have 3 super exciting prospects coming probably to the Major League team this year in Marcelo Meyer and Roman Anthony and Christian Campbell. So that's exciting. And they still have guys like could you imagine a team where it's like Jaren Duran's at the 1, and then maybe some righty batter at 2, maybe they could still get Teoscar Hernandez, and then you have Rafi Devers, and then you have Juan Soto, or you flip those two, whatever you want to do, and then you just fill out the rest with like whoever you can, like Tristan Casas, one of those 3 prospects that I mentioned. If Masataka Yoshida is still on the team, if Wilyer Abreu is still on the team, like, whoa, then you're looking at a team that like is really good offensively. Now the pitching still has a long way to go, and I think there's still guys they're looking at. Max Fried, they could trade for a guy like Flaherty. Whatever they end up doing, there's no way that they don't emerge from this offseason a better team than they were last year, and that's what excites me so much right now about the Red Sox, and I'll continue to follow this in great depth because I think that like there's potential franchise-altering moves that are going to be made in the next couple weeks. Juan Soto would obviously be the big one. If he did decide to come to Boston, that'd be huge, but even if that deal doesn't work out, I still expect them to bring in some righty bats, which is like, yes, and I know Juan Soto's a lefty bat, but it's like he's just a guy that you make an exception for because the Red Sox already have so many lefties, and their big priority, I think, is to bring in some righty bats because they frankly struggled last season against left-handed pitchers. So bring in some righty bats for sure. But the big story here is obviously Juan Soto, and if they can somehow lock down that deal, man, it's going to be exciting times around here. The Red Sox would, I think, propel themselves to be the second best team in the ML in Boston, rather second best team in the MLB. No, like maybe they'd be a top 5 though. Frankly, I can't think of 5 teams that'd be better if they had Juan Soto and they got pitching help. That would just be a hell of a fun team to watch, man. So fingers crossed, John Henry can get it done. And this would, and like talk about a way to immediately fix your legacy and reputation with the fan base if John Henry goes out and gives Juan Soto a 10-year, $700 million contract. That would be pretty freaking amazing. So hopefully it happens. Fingers crossed. I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much as always for tuning in to Title Time Talk. My name is Jackson Tolliver. I will see you when I see you. I'll probably hopefully be back next week if I'm not too busy. I'll see you then. Thanks.